metal shop, I use clamps every day, and they're incredibly important in the type of work I do. I need to rely on them that they're going to hold the work where I want it and not shift. This is one of my favorite styles of clamps. This is a Bessie bar clamp. Some people call it an F clamp. This is how it works. At the top, you've got a fixed pad, and the bottom pad is adjustable on a little screw post, and this rides on a bar. The reason I like it so much is because they're very, very fast. I can go from clamping this 1/8 inch material here to clamping this 4-inch block of aluminum in a very short period of time. Now, when you're doing a lot of different type of work, that's really important because it adds up in the day. Other styles of clamps, like a C clamp or something like that, you have to have a wide variety of sizes, and you have to always adjust your screw post up and down, and that takes time, and it's a waste of time. Now, some of the things to look for when you're buying bar clamps. First off, the material that's used. You want something that's built out of good steel. If it's not built out of good steel, it's going to twist and it's going to fail very quickly, and it's not going to hold your work where you need it to be. The next thing I look for is the coating that's used on the clamp itself. Now, this particular clamp has a galvanized coating on it, and that's really helpful if you do a lot of MIG welding, because MIG welding has splatter, and the splatter will stick to your clamps. With a galvanized coating on it, it doesn't happen as frequently. The last thing I really look for is the screw post itself, how it's built, how the threads are, and very importantly, the swivel on it. This particular clamp has a little ball actually machined into the end of the post. I know this swivel pad is not going to come off very quickly. On other clamps, it happens a lot. These swivel pads fall off, they break, and then the clamp becomes, quite useless, to be honest with you, because you lose a lot of the versatility of it. I want to show you a few different setups that I use when doing bench work. For this operation, we'll be using 1, 2, 3 blocks, a V block, machinist square, and a couple pieces of scrap metal that I'll be using as shims. We'll be doing square tubing, round tubing, and a flat plate to round tube setup. Here we go. I start by clamping the first tube at both ends. I have the clamps flipped because it's easier to adjust, and I don't have to worry about my legs ramming into them while I'm working. You want to make sure to use enough clamps. You can't have too many. I'm using a machinist square to set the angle to 90 degrees and recheck often. You also want to make sure that you don't over-apply pressure. You just need enough to hold it in position. I start off by clamping this at both ends. Next, I use a 1, 2, 3 block, and I clamp that directly to my table. I'm then going to take my second piece of tubing and align that with my 1, 2, 3 block while using a spacer at the other end of that tubing for support. I then clamp the second piece of tubing to the 1, 2, 3 block that's already clamped on my table. This makes it one complete fixture. Lastly, I use another clamp directly at the joint and recheck my angles. With this operation, you might be inclined to try a single clamp from above in a vertical position. This is really not a great way to do that. It's very unstable and it doesn't allow for easy repositioning. Instead, you might want to try to tackle this from a horizontal position using a V-block. I first clamp the tube in a V-block. I then use some shims and a 1-2-3 block for the plate. This allows me to confidently clamp my work and reposition it with ease. I use one more bar clamp to keep the joint tight for welding. In this operation, I'll be welding two pieces of round tubing, one with a coped end. Instead of clamping this directly to my work table, I use V-block and 1-2-3 blocks again. I start by taking my coped piece of tubing, clamping it in a V-block, which raises it, and then I use 1-2-3 blocks and shims to bring the other piece of tubing up to the proper height, and I clamp those in position. With this particular piece of tubing, I'm able to actually put the foot of the clamp directly in the tubing and then use another clamp at the opposite end to balance out the pressure. Once I've got those locked down, I go back, loosen up my coped piece of tubing, get that correctly fit, and then tighten my clamps up and continue on for welding. Now, clamps like this are available in a lot of different sizes and styles. Longer ones, shorter ones, and duty styles. So you can get a really heavy duty one or medium duty. This one here is more of a light duty style clamp. You might want to check out Bessie.com to see their wide variety.